What's up, everybody? So I've been talking about launching a podcast off the back of AI with Alec, the newsletter, since I hit 1,000 subscribers, which I've kind of blown it. I haven't done it, and I need to, and I will. But thanks to my incredible wife, Julia La Roche, who interviewed the one and only, the greatest moderator in the history of mankind, Jason Calacanis, the moderator and host for the All In Pod, which is my favorite podcast. Second, of course, to the Julia La Roche Show. It was just very inspiring hearing him talk about his journey and his story. And I think that one of the things I love about how my wife, interviews people is she does an enormous amount of research, and then she asks really insightful questions, and then she's just quiet and lets her guest really unpack, all sorts of stories and insights and observations about their world. Jason's journey is amazing. But one of the things that it came out loud and clear is like, yeah, don't talk about it. Just do it, right? Just get after it. And so that's the beginning of where this is coming from, right? So I need to launch a podcast. I haven't gotten around to it. I will, I promise. I love talking to people. Anybody that's ever known me or worked with me knows that. But I thought what I could do to kind of kick things off, and I'm looking at the clock here, I'm 90 seconds in, so hopefully this won't be too long, is that I've written 25 of these newsletters, right? AI with Alec, and they've been pretty well received, and they're not too long, but they're not the shortest things in the world, and some of us are more auditory and whatnot, and others like to read things. I'm more so a reader, but for those that are more auditory, I wonder maybe I could just start reading these things, right? And they take about 7 minutes to read. They're anywhere between 1,500 and 1,700, 1,800 words. So I'm just gonna go ahead and do that. And so I'm gonna start with the one that I just recently published, which was newsletter 25. And here we go. So if you're not into this, don't watch it. Obviously, don't waste your time. And if you've already read the newsletter, I would probably encourage you not to watch this either. But I don't know, maybe get a kick out of listening to me, because I'm probably going to go off script here and there and talk a little bit about why I wrote what I wrote as I go through it. But anyway, here we go. Newsletter 25. Chapter 1 was ChatGPT, November 30th, 2022. Did Chapter 2 just start via Gemini by Google? Nice name, Google. Well done. Wink, wink. On December 6th, 2023? Well, yeah, I definitely think so. And here's why. So here we go. Some say there are chapters to consider when a transformative technology is launched. Chapter 1 is the first 12 months or so where the technology bursts onto the scene, right? We all know what that's been like. The hype cycle kicks in, where the technology is portrayed as a game changer with the potential to revolutionize the way we work and live. Feel free to look at my newsletters. I'm definitely guilty as charged with all the stuff I've written about ChatGPT, OpenAI, and the generative AI era of business and life since it's been launched. So this of course sparks dialogue within the ecosystem, broader communities, including regulatory bodies, in an effort to balance the hype with meaningful conversations around the implications of exponential change, which is a lot of fun, and it's exciting, but a little difficult to navigate. It's not every day that you experience exponential change. But at some point during Chapter 1, and most definitely in Chapter 2, competitive dynamics start to drive innovation and advancement. Diversity of solutions, price to value, recalibrations, feature races, ecosystem developments, etc. All very good things for competition, the market, and the ecosystem more broadly. If the launch of ChatGPT on November 30th last year was Chapter 1 for the generative AI era, Google's launch of Gemini by Google's DeepMind on December 6th of last week, of this year, feels like we have officially entered Chapter 2. So quick quote from their research report they published with the announcement, which is, this report introduces a new family of multimodal models, Gemini, that exhibit remarkable capabilities across image, audio, video, and text understanding. The Gemini family consists of Ultra, Pro, and Nano sizes suitable for applications ranging from complex reasoning tasks to on-device, memory-constrained use cases. Evaluation on a broad range of benchmarks shows that our most capable Gemini Ultra model advances the state-of-the-art in 30 of 32 of these benchmarks, notably being the first model to achieve human expert performance on the well-studied exam benchmark MMLU, and improving the state of the art in every one of the 20 multimodal benchmarks we examined. We believe the new capabilities of Gemini models in cross-modal reasoning and language understanding will enable a wide variety of use cases, and we discuss our approach toward deploying them responsibly to users. Again, comes from a link which you can find in the newsletter to the research report they published. And so then now this is me speaking, right? So Wall Street liked what they saw. Alphabet, aka Google, was up 5.3% on Thursday, December 7th, believing the AI model was a major step towards being able to compete more meaningfully with Microsoft-backed OpenAI. Little image of the stock chart, of course. But unfortunately, what you also see in that image is a little bit of a decline off the back of the big gains. And so, again, my words, while Google gave some of the gains back on Friday after concerns spread around the validity of the 6-minute demo video, maybe Google can improve its storytelling quotient in the future to avoid these missteps as they're distracting, right? This, unfortunately, is not the first time that Google, in relation to its activity in this space, have had a couple of missteps in the marketing arena. I'm sure they'll work that out. I have a screenshot of some folks that had some comments in regards to this on Twitter, which the headline says, Google admits that a Gemini AI demo video was staged. Strong language, I get it, but listen, it is what it is. So first and foremost, go back to my language. First and foremost, check out the 6-minute video, which there's a link in my newsletter, to get a feel for what we're dealing with and how significant this multimodal native model is. It also gives you a sense of why Sundar Pichai and Demis Hassabis, I'm guarantee I just mispronounced his name. And I'm going to go back at some point and learn how to pronounce his name because that's embarrassing and terrible, but I don't know how to pronounce his name. But he is the CEO and co-founder of Google DeepMind. He's a complete monster. He's incredible. There were some very cool things said about him on the All In pod, especially by Chamath, when he was talking about him and why he's so excited about what Google's doing, in part because of the leadership of this team. So this is what they would say. So it gives you a sense of why these folks would say the things like this in their joint blog post launching Gemini. All right, so this is from Sundar. Every technology shift is an opportunity to advance scientific discovery, accelerate human progress, and improve lives. I believe the transition we are seeing right now with AI will be the most profound in our lifetimes, far bigger than the shift to mobile or to the web before it. AI has the potential to create opportunities from the everyday to the extraordinary for people everywhere. It will bring new waves of innovation and economic progress and drive knowledge, learning, creativity, and productivity on a scale we haven't seen before. These are the first models of the Gemini era and the first realization of the vision we had when we formed Google DeepMind earlier this year. This new era of models represents one of the biggest science and engineering efforts we've undertaken as a company. Now, from the DeepMind CEO, his quote: "Ever since programming AI for computer games as a teenager," very cool, "and throughout my years as a neuroscience researcher trying to understand the workings of the brain, I've always believed that if we could build smarter machines, we could harness them to benefit humanity in incredible ways. For a long time, we've wanted to build a new generation of AI models inspired by the way people understand and interact with the world. AI that feels less like a smart piece of software and more like something useful and intuitive, an expert helper or an assistant. It was built from the ground up to be multimodal, which means it can generalize and seamlessly understand, operate across, and combine different types of information, including text, code, audio, image, and video." End quote. This is reinforced, all of the above, by the way leaders within the AI Twitter ecosystem reacted to. So speaking of Chamath, got a quote there from him via one of his tweets. Gary Marcus, another phenomenal leader to follow on all things AI on Twitter. He's got a great quote and some thoughts. Ali Miller, another really, really well-informed superstar in the space. And Balaji, of course, another deep thinker whose points of view are always worth paying attention to. And then there's Robert Scoble, who's great, very funny guy. So yeah, I smile because every time I see a tweet from him, I always laugh. All right, so here we go. Keep going. So the Google launch video that I liked the best was unlocking insights in scientific literature. Because it was short, it was only 2 minutes and 40 seconds, and it brought to life the impact of the multimodal model that it can have on industry agnostic workflows that involve massive amounts of content and data that used to require a significant amount of human labor to sift through, but not anymore. Really encourage you to jump in, click on the video link and watch the video itself. But I pulled a couple of excerpts, one of which is, a common problem scientists face is the need to find and use data extracted from the scientific literature. This is difficult because scientists need to search amongst thousands of scientific papers for key information and extract them by hand. It's a very common workflow and it's very time consuming. We're looking at this study from 2022. The authors had created a data set by reviewing tens of thousands of scientific papers in genetics. They found a few hundred papers that contain the relevant information extracted by hand and collected in a table. Studies like this can take a long time, right? So continuing, and these are excerpts pulled from different parts of the video. We needed to update this data set with what's new over the last couple of years, but that's over 200,000 new open access papers added to this domain since 2021. We couldn't do this manually, so we asked Gemini to help us out. We ran this at scale, and over a lunch break, Gemini read 200,000 papers for us, filtered it down to 250, and extracted their data. So now we have a refreshed version of this data set. But because Gemini is multimodal, not only can it reason about information from text, it can also reason about figures. So let me show you something really neat. With a refreshed data set, we can now ask Gemini to update a graph from the original study. We first gave Gemini a screenshot of this figure. Then we asked it to generate the code required to plot it. And by feeding this code or new data set, we get our updated figure. You can see this figure now includes data up until 2023. Now, these are my words. The above example is powerful, right, in its own right. But I think where things are headed with multimodal that are especially interesting and exciting to me have parallels to the importance of the diversity of human perspectives when looking at increasingly complex information, a situation, a problem to be solved, etc. Oversimplifying things, but if you think of large language models trained on text, what if the text was written by a human being who interpreted an event that happened, such as a 90-minute meeting with 10 other people participating in it? And maybe each of those other people wrote down what they observed, learned, key takeaways from that same meeting. But some of those people wrote their notes down immediately, like straight away, right? After the meeting wrapped up, and others waited a few hours, while others maybe forgot to take notes. So they pulled together what they could remember after a couple of days after the fact, and it is what it is. Probably remembered some of it, probably didn't remember all of it. That goes. While all of that text would be helpful for sure, I think we've all played the telephone game as kids and otherwise, and recognize the difference between what was said in the beginning versus what comes out at the end of the train, if you will. This is where a multimodal native bit is beyond compelling to me. When you enable a multimodal native model, you're effectively giving it the ability to interpret the text, aka notes by the 10 meeting participants, but you're also enabling the model to have a seat at the table, right? Giving it eyes and ears to consume the video/audio in real time at the meeting itself, perhaps, which gives it a raw data set that moves problem solving, for example, to a more first principles track than anything else. Multiple data sets in, multiple data sets out natively, helping everyone benefit from each other's perspectives while maintaining a single source of truth, which is the actual recording of what was actually said, versus each individual's interpretation, which could be slightly to moderately calibrated by the lens through which they see the world. We've all been in meetings before, right, where you kind of all walk out and maybe a couple hours later, it's as if some of you were in different meetings, right? And this happens, it's natural. But again, multimodal native models can introduce a whole different dimension of the way that we are able to interpret and use various forms of information and data. And so here comes a quote from, I think, a really great article that was in Wired, headlined, Google's Gemini is the real start of the generative AI boom. So a couple excerpts here. With Gemini, it claims to have opened a new era that goes beyond LLMs, primarily anchored to text, potentially setting the stage for a new round of AI products significantly different from those enabled by ChatGPT. Google calls Gemini a natively multimodal model, meaning it can learn from data beyond just text, also slurping up insights from audio, video, and images. ChatGPT shows how AI models can learn an impressive amount about the world if provided enough text. But there's only so much you can learn about the physical reality through the filter of text that humans have written about it, and the hard to eradicate limitations of LLMs like GPT-4, such as hallucinating information, poor reasoning, and their weird security flaws, seem to suggest that scaling existing technology has its limits. But the CEO of Google Mind also said that to deliver AI systems that can understand the world in ways that today's chatbots can't, LLMs will need to be combined with other AI techniques. That fits with remarks made in April by OpenAI CEO Sam Altman at MIT, when he made clear that despite the success of ChatGPT, the field of AI needs a big new idea to make significant further progress. Quote unquote, I think we're at the end of the era where it's going to be these like giant models, end quote, Altman said. Quote unquote, we'll make them better in other ways, end quote. Continuing with the excerpt, final one from the Wired article, Google may have just demonstrated an approach that can go beyond ChatGPT. But perhaps the most notable message from Gemini's launch is that Google is set on driving towards something more significant than today's chatbots, just as OpenAI appears to be too, end quote. That was the article. Now, back to my words. Bringing this back to the real world and what's happening today, this is why I believe the LA Clippers job post for a director of AI and emerging technology, which I've linked to in the newsletter, was so well written and a leading indicator of things to come across professional and collegiate sports. We've entered chapter 2. 2024 is going to be one heck of a year. That's it for this week. I hope you found this week's newsletter useful. Enjoy your Sunday. Today's not Sunday, but we can talk next week. Alec, it's the end of the newsletter. So I don't know how well this is going to be received. I do remember, shout out Reid Hoffman, that when you look back at your alpha, your beta, your MVP after you ship it, if you look back and you're not kind of embarrassed at the quality of what you've shipped, as Reid Hoffman has said, you shipped too late. So pretty sure I'm going to be embarrassed by this video, and that's okay. Not the highest quality, but I'm giving it a shot. I'm doing the work, as J. Cal said to my rock star wife, and this is the first of 25, I guess, or so. 25th newsletter will start there, and I guess we'll just work backwards, 25, 24, so on and so forth. And hopefully I'll launch a podcast before I get to newsletter number 1, because pretty sure that podcast talking to the people doing the great work in this space of generative AI and otherwise would be a lot more interesting than me just reading my newsletter. But hey, you never know. We'll see what happens. So thanks for listening. Thanks for reading. We'll go from there.